Hi, I'm Caroline Bateman. I've helped hundreds of students become great touch typists, some of whom had given up and thought they'd never be able to learn. But I was able to help them because over the years of teaching, I have devised some very simple yet highly effective tips for setting students up for success, and I'm going to share them with you now. Most students ask me, which solution should I use to learn to type? And while I am happy to advise on package selection, these tips are far more fundamental, and they will help whichever package you use to learn to type, and they help in the areas that most students really struggle with. Learning to type is one of the most important skills that students can learn. It doesn't just make you highly productive, able to finish work much quicker than writing by hand or typing slowly. It also enables students to utilize many learning tools that help them get higher grades. So why do students find it so hard? Well, learning to touch type requires students to use all 8 fingers, and they do not look at the keyboard, but they type by touch using unconscious muscle memory. And when you're learning to type, that doesn't come naturally. Students want to use the fingers that they use in everyday life. They don't normally use these fingers, and they want to look at the keyboard. That's much easier than trying to remember which fingers to use. A huge part of learning to type successfully is to stop students doing what comes naturally to them and forcing them not to look at the keyboard and to use the right fingers. Let me show you how I do that. I make sure we get the fundamentals right, and I do this by ensuring students always rest their fingers on the home row keys and that they do not look at their fingers while they're typing. How do I do this? Firstly, I'll tell you how to make sure you rest your fingers on the home row keys. Keyboard manufacturers have tried to make it easy for you. Did you know that there are ridges on the F and the J keys on every keyboard? Let me show you. Here, F, J, F, and J, and it continues. And this is true of every keyboard you've ever used, but you might not have noticed. So I make sure that these ridges are really, really easy for my students to find. In fact, I make sure that they are impossible to miss. This is my regular QWERTY keyboard, and I hope you can see here that on the F and the J keys, instead of relying on the little ridges that can be very hard for students to find, I have put on a tactile sticker over the F and the J keys that will make it very, very hard to miss. If I place my 2 pointer fingers on the F and the J and then rest my other fingers on the keys next door, I am now in a claw position on the home row keys, and this is the position I always want students to come back to. Next, how do you make sure students don't peek at the keyboard? Basically, you need to make it impossible, and you do this by using keyboard covers. And in the past, I used to buy them, but I stopped doing this because I just found it too expensive, because I'm always trying to keep my costs down. So I decided to make my own, and I'm going to show you a few different options that all have different prices, but none of them are expensive. But some were more popular and more effective than others. So the first cover I made was cheap and cheerful. It was paper. And this is how I made it. I just printed out the finger positioning. I sellotaped it to the keyboard, and students were able to locate the bobbly bits and type underneath here. So this is very cheap and cheerful, but it wasn't very popular with my students. In a similar way, I used a cloth. This was just a J cloth, and because it was just so light. Students found this easier to use than the paper, but it wasn't as aesthetically pleasing. While keyboard covers were expensive, keyboards are actually really cheap. So I buy a dedicated keyboard for students to learn to type. I then use stickers, not just the 3D stickers on the F and the J, but stickers on every letter so students cannot cheat. Here are 2 examples of 2 color-coded blind keyboards. This one has 8 different colors, so each finger would have a different color, and this one only has 5. So here I would have the little fingers are both yellow, the next finger, the ring finger, is green, the middle finger is blue on both sides, but I make sure that the 2 center fingers have different colors. If students are struggling to know which fingers to use, I can supply bands for each colour on the keyboard, but in all honesty this rarely happens. Sometimes students just need to be reminded which pointer finger to use, and so this is more likely the case. But students only need to wear the bands if they find them helpful. As the positioning of the stickers is very important, I supply this diagram, which you can find on my website. And just to reiterate, the stickers must cover every letter, that we have a different colour for each finger. So I've used nail varnish in each hand to indicate the keys each finger would type, but in actual fact, when you're in the home row position, you cannot see your nails, which is the reason why I use the colour bands rather than nail varnish. I do not put stickers over the numbers or the punctuation on the top, but just the punctuation that is typed by the right hand. So what's required to set typists up for success? A keyboard and some stickers. That's all that you need. And with those, students can go and learn to type really quickly in a very short period. And this is an example of one of my students who really struggled to write, but in just 1 week went from 3 words per minute to 30 words per minute. But I have to admit, while these tools are really helpful, they are not magic. Nobody becomes a proficient touch typist without lots of practice, practice, practice. And this is where it's really important that students understand the many advantages of typing work and how it will help them to improve their grades, because only then will they have the intrinsic motivation to do the necessary practice to become a proficient touch typist. I really do hope you find these tips useful and you go on and become a really proficient touch typist. My experience has taught me that being able to type will help students get much better grades. To that end, I've been creating lots of helpful videos, basically to help teachers teach this skill more effectively, but also to let students know all the different ways they can get higher grades once they can type. But Achieve Now is about so much more than typing. Typing is just one of the ways that we help students get better grades. I create lots of other free resources. These are just some of them, and there are details on how to download them below this video. If you found this video helpful, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. If you hit the bell button, you'll be informed when I create new videos. Thanks for watching.